You do not need a six-figure security subscription to build zero trust. You need to stop treating everything behind your firewall as safe. I'm going to show you a practical blueprint built around identity, hardware-backed authentication, conditional access, encrypted connections, and continuous verification. Most of the controls may already be sitting inside tools your business uses every day. The goal is simple. Never trust a request just because it came from inside the network. The old security model looked like a traditional European castle. The office network was the castle. The firewall was the moat. Employees and devices inside the walls received trust. Everything outside looked suspicious. That model made more sense when people, computers, and company files stayed in one building. Lean businesses do not operate that way anymore. People work remotely, applications live in the cloud, data moves between personal homes, shared spaces, phones, laptops, and outside services. A single corporate firewall cannot make all of those environments trustworthy, so this blueprint changes the question. Instead of asking, is this request inside our network, we ask, who is requesting access? What device are they using? What do they need? And should this particular request be allowed right now? We will rebuild security in 5 layers. First, identity. Then, conditional access. Then, encrypted tunnels. Then, continuous verification. And finally, a maintenance routine that keeps the whole design from quietly falling apart. Here is the first mindset shift. Assume the network is already compromised. I know that sounds pessimistic, but it's actually useful. If you assume the network is safe, one successful login can become a master key. The intruder gets past the edge, finds more systems, and attempts to move sideways. Your design depends on the first wall never failing. Zero trust removes that assumption. A person sitting in the office does not automatically deserve more access than a person working from home. A device connected to the company Wi-Fi is not automatically healthy. Internal traffic is not automatically harmless. Every important request has to prove itself. Think of an office building with a front desk. Passing the front desk should not open the accounting room, the server closet, and every filing cabinet. Each sensitive room needs its own decision. The same principle applies to applications and data. Do not spend all of your effort protecting an entire network as one giant object. Identify the assets that would cause real damage if exposed. Financial data, administrative accounts, sensitive applications. Then place verification directly in front of those assets. This limits how much trust any single login, device, or network connection receives. The firewall can remain one layer. It just stops being the layer that decides everything. Once location no longer equals trust, identity becomes the new front door. Your identity provider should become the main security gatekeeper. For many small businesses, that means the identity controls already connected to Google Workspace or Microsoft 365. The important change is not the brand. It is making one verified identity the starting point for access decisions. Beginning with the accounts that can do the most damage. Owners, administrators, finance staff, anyone who can change security settings or reach sensitive data. Those accounts should not depend on passwords alone. Passwords can be copied, reused, guessed, or handed to a fake login page. Passkeys and physical security keys change the equation because authentication is backed by hardware instead of relying on something a person types. That removes the ordinary password from the phishing exchange. Next, use the signals your identity environment can evaluate. Where is the login coming from? Is the device recognized and managed? Does the request fit the user's normal role? A valid password should not end the conversation. It should begin a new decision. Picture an attacker holding the correct password, but signing in from an unexpected location or unmanaged hardware. Under the perimeter model, the password may be enough. Under zero trust, the identity is only one signal. The device and context still have to pass. Roll this out in order of risk. Protect administrators and high-value accounts first. Then expand hardware-backed authentication to everyone else. You're not buying a magical security box. You're turning identity into a checkpoint that evaluates every important request. And that checkpoint becomes far more useful when it can enforce clear access rules. Now we reach the part that expensive security pitches often make sound impossible: conditional access. The concept is straightforward. A request is allowed only when it meets specific conditions. Start with roles. A salesperson does not need the same access as an administrator. A contractor does not need permanent access to every internal application. Finance data should not be available merely because someone has a company account. Give each role access to the smallest practical set of resources. Then add device conditions. Sensitive applications can require verified or managed hardware. An unknown personal device may receive no access or access only to less sensitive resources. Next, add location and risk conditions available inside your environment. If your business never operates in certain territories, requests from those territories deserve blocking or extra scrutiny. The exact settings depend on the native controls and service tiers you already have, so inventory those controls before buying anything new. Then prioritize. Don't try to create 50 rules on the first day. Start with a few policies that protect the biggest targets. Require strong authentication for administrators. Restrict high value data to appropriate roles. Block unmanaged hardware from sensitive applications. Remove access that nobody can justify. Test each rule with a small group before expanding it, because a security policy that locks out the entire team will be disabled quickly. Keep the rules understandable. If nobody can explain why a policy exists, nobody will maintain it. Conditional access works because it turns vague suspicion into repeatable decisions. Identity, role, device, and context either meet the requirement or they do not. But there is a deeper advantage here, and it changes what small businesses should actually spend money on. Here's the biggest reveal. Zero trust is not something you purchase. It's a way of arranging trust. A costly tool cannot rescue an architecture that gives every internal user broad access. And a lean stack can be surprisingly strong when every request is narrow, verified, and encrypted. That changes the buying question. Do not ask which platform promises to secure everything. Instead, ask where are we granting trust without checking identity, device, role, and context. Find those gaps first. Your highest value improvement may be a setting that was never enabled, an old permission that was never removed, or a password login that should have been replaced with a passkey or physical key. Architectural discipline outperforms a pile of disconnected tools because the controls reinforce one another. A stolen password meets device verification. A compromised device meets role restrictions. An internal connection still meets encryption. Now we can address the connection itself, because internal traffic should never receive a free pass. Traditional remote access often tries to recreate the old perimeter. A user connects to a corporate VPN and effectively steps inside the network. The connection may be encrypted, but the design can still grant wider paths than the person actually needs. Zero Trust network access takes a narrower approach. Instead of connecting a user to the whole network, a connector creates a direct path to a specific application or task. The user proves identity. The device meets the policy. Then the connection reaches only the approved destination. Think of it as a private hallway built for one door, not a visitor badge that unlocks the whole floor. Small businesses can explore open source or freemium service mesh and ZTNA options rather than beginning with a large enterprise platform. The principle matters more than the logo. Keep paths specific, authenticate them, and encrypt them. Internal traffic should also be encrypted by default. Remember, we are assuming that some part of the environment may already be compromised. If an intruder attempts to move laterally, encryption helps keep intercepted data unreadable. Segmented, task-specific paths also reduce what an intruder can reach. Map the connections your business genuinely needs. Who needs the accounting application? Who maintains a server? Which service accounts communicate with which systems? Replace broad network access with the narrowest functional route. Do not create complexity for its own sake. The goal is a small number of understandable encrypted paths tied to verified identities and real tasks. Once those paths exist, the final problem is making sure they remain trustworthy next month. Zero Trust is not finished when the settings go live. Permissions accumulate, employees change roles, contractors finish projects. Service accounts outlive the systems they were created for. Without maintenance, yesterday's narrow access becomes tomorrow's open side door. Use the logs and alerts already available in your cloud dashboards to watch for unusual access patterns. You're not trying to imitate a full security operations center. You're creating a small set of signals your team can realistically review. Unexpected login locations, repeated denied requests, attempts to reach applications outside of a user's role, access from hardware that's not verified. Alerts only help when someone owns them. so assign responsibility and define what happens next. Then run a monthly least privilege audit. Review who has administrative rights. Remove former employees. Disable outdated service accounts. Strip permissions from people who no longer need them. Ask one direct question for every high-value permission. Does this person or system still need this access to perform a real task? If the answer is unclear, investigate it. Do not preserve access merely because removing it feels inconvenient. This monthly routine is where zero trust becomes a habit rather than a one-time project. The architecture stays lean because unnecessary trust is removed before it spreads. You do not need endless dashboards. You need reliable authentication, focused policies, encrypted paths, useful alerts, and recurring review. That is architectural discipline, and it is the part no subscription can automate away completely. Here's the complete blueprint. Assume the network is compromised. Put identity in front of important access. Replace password-only protection with passkeys or physical security keys. Apply conditional access rules based on roles, devices, locations, and risk. Give users encrypted paths to specific tasks instead of broad network access. Monitor useful signals. Then remove unnecessary permissions every month. Start with administrators and your most sensitive applications. Expand from there. Zero Trust is not a product tier. It is the discipline of making every important request earn access. Subscribe if you want practical security architecture without the enterprise sales pitch. Next, watch my guide on running a 15-minute least privilege audit. It turns the monthly review from this blueprint into a simple checklist your team can actually follow. Thanks again for watching. Like and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one.